Welcome to the October 2022 Star Wars Canon Update. Last month we got 4 more episodes of Andor, the start of the High Republic Phase 2, and 5 other comic issues, so let's dive in. Andor episodes 5 through 8 continued to be awesome. The end of the Aldhani arc was insanely exciting, and then we got to see how the Empire quickly responded to rebel activity, closing their fist as tight as they could. Even while telling a very focused and personal story about characters we would normally consider to be behind the scenes, we're getting a lot of big picture movement about both the overreach of the Empire and the way the rebellion was inspired. Episode 8 started a new arc, and I loved everything in the prison, but I won't talk too much more about Andor because, like always, if you're watching this video, you've probably already seen the series. You can check out my full episode reviews in the cards if you're interested. Tales of the Jedi came out just this past Wednesday with 3 episodes about Ahsoka and 3 about Dooku, but all of them felt very thematically linked, which I thought was a cool touch. I dug the Dooku stories a lot more, getting to see his interactions with young Qui-Gon Jinn, Mace Windu, and Sidious, getting to see his descent into the dark side, watching him delete Kamino from the Jedi archives. All of that was great, but we should talk about some canon issues. First, people have questions about Dooku's timeline. It's my belief that the shorts don't change anything. He left the Jedi Order well before The Phantom Menace, and you can see my video on that in the cards. The final short is a retelling of the Ahsoka novel, and it makes significant changes. I'm choosing to view the novel as the quote-unquote true version, and the short as an adaptation that keeps all the main story beats. But it is a much more nuanced situation that includes the removal of a queer character from the story. We discussed that in length in our live stream last week if you want to see not only our thoughts, but the good points brought up by our friends in the chat. And I'll link to a detailed article by our friend Hope in the description if you want to learn even more. The High Republic returned with Path of Deceit and the first issue of the new comic series. Path of Deceit introduced us to the Path of the Open Hand, a cult that believes the Force should not be used at all, so they're not crazy about the Jedi. We meet the ancestors of Marchion Ro, see how the Nile could eventually be formed, and we get some information on the Nameless, their homeworld, and origins in general. I'll link to my full review of the book in the cards, and if you're interested in reading it for yourself, you can pick up the audiobook for free by following the link in the description or by visiting www.audibletrial.com/Star Wars Explained. The first issue of the new High Republic comic series got off to an intriguing start. We are introduced to Vildar Mak, a Jedi Master who goes to Jedha, which is already very cool to see at this point. The Jedi are tolerated, but people don't exactly enjoy their presence, even though it's meant to be a place for all followers of the Force. He and a Padawan named Maddie investigate a robbery until they run into the thief that apparently uses the Force to stop Vildar's heart, killing him in the first issue, which seems like such a Cavan Scott thing to do, but I think the Jedi Master will be fine, to some degree, continuing to appear in future series. The issue has a little bonus story about the Convocation of the Force, a group of leaders from different belief systems who debate and discuss what's best for Jedha. It's all very interesting, and I'm glad to have the High Republic back. Star Wars issue 28 did something pretty significant for the canon. It told us how the Rebel Alliance learned the Empire was building a second Death Star. The past few issues have followed an Imperial family that worked on the station until they fled. Last month, they escaped to Coruscant, where it seemed like finding them would be a huge challenge, and then this month Luke waltzed in and found them no problem, and now the whole rebellion knows. The resolution seemed a little rushed, but I do like the overall story of how Kira and her Imperial double agents wound up doing some real good for the galaxy. No matter how the rest of her story plays out, it means that she did achieve her goal of bringing down the Empire and the Sith. Darth Vader issue 28 was a little strange, but I think a step in the right direction. This series has been up and down for me. I loved the early issues with Vader and Sabe. She was gone for a while, and now she's back, and they're working even more closely together, even with the Emperor's blessing, which I think is a little strange, but it plays into the Emperor's overconfidence. At this point, he thinks Vader fully believes he can't ever challenge his master's power. I think Vader believes that too, because in the end, the Emperor is not beaten by strength or power the way the dark side understands it. The Emperor is beaten when Vader finally gives up the search for power and just surrenders to compassion. So I guess the Emperor doesn't feel threatened by Sabe and even thinks she can be brought further into darkness, which does seem like a legitimate danger. And that's why I think it's a step in a good direction, that we might start focusing on Sabe more than Vader, and her fellow handmaidens might have to be the ones to save her or stop her. Dr. Aphra issue 25 is like the 4th or 5th banger issue in a row. I can't remember at this point, but I love the possessed Aphra storyline, getting the chance to see some ancient Star Wars history and relics through her memories, while also having a great and exciting rescue story in the present day. Having 000 and BT-1 back is as much fun as I hoped it would be. Aphra's rescuers all board the Crimson Dawn flagship to try to save her, and we get some hints that the criminal syndicate is up to something even worse than the Spark Eternal. I continue to love how pulpy and wild this series gets to be. The 4th issue of the Mandalorian adaptation was still just as straightforward as possible. If you've seen the show, I don't think you'll get anything new out of reading the comic. And finally, the Star Wars Visions comic came out, which technically isn't canon, but still, I'm gonna talk about it. I thought it was kinda weird. The art style was great, but I didn't really follow the story. The Sith Ronin and his droid encounter an old Jedi and his droid, and they chat and then decide not to kill each other. It's worth looking at for the art alone. I actually bought the physical copy and not just the digital one because I wanted to have the art, but the story didn't do much for me. For Story of the Month, I think everyone is watching Andor already, but Episode 8 is one of my favorite Star Wars stories in recent memory, so I'm going with that. In November, we're getting the final 4 episodes of Andor, 2 books, and 13 comic issues, including the start of the Yoda miniseries, the start of the Hidden Empire, and the start of the High Republic Adventures reboot. 1 TV series ends, and 3 comic series begin. And the books are the final 2 in Wave 1 of Phase 2 of the High Republic. That's a confusing tongue twister. Anyway, the Canon update will return on December 1st to cover all those new stories. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all our Star Wars coverage, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.